Right, so I apologize for the tardiness of getting out the minutes and this week's agenda. I got, oh wow, 23. Yeah, that's brisk too. um, I had a couple of bad sick days last week, and it just left me really behind. So uh, sorry about that. I have started using Google Gemini to help with the minutes. So I did put a note down there, but if there's anything, any important points that I missed or anything you want to make sure gets in there, uh, please let me know. I'll probably keep doing that moving forward because it's really nice. I can just put in the entire transcription and it summarizes it, and then I can edit. And you can even get it to show you like multiple drafts, so you can figure out like which draft you like or combine drafts. I thought that was like super handy. Um, I found that very helpful. So there's my plug for Gemini. And I like it better than ChatGTP because it doesn't give you the same limits on the information you can put into it, or at least at the free level, which is really nice. All right, just a couple updates before we give in. We're supposed to be getting our GitHub repo. I have not received a link yet, so I will follow up on that later today. And I also want to let you know that I will take the phrase kickoff off of the invite. I hope that's not causing confusion, but since we were able to basically use this time as our regular meeting, I just used the same invitation, but it's no longer our kickoff meeting, so I will update that. So today, unless there's any outstanding business from last meeting, anyone wants to discuss, although that was also pretty much on the OKRs. I just wanted to dig in a little deeper to the two that I think are most likely candidates for some of the things we could do to define them and keep them moving forward. So one of the things I've been thinking about is just in some aspect, the fact of developing the OKR itself is sort of an OKR because we're really starting from scratch as a group. And I think we can say we're going to do a landscape analysis without necessarily defining all the steps for it yet. But I did come up with some things that I thought might be helpful to include. And they're modular enough that I think this gives us individual goals that we can kind of achieve and check off. So we've talked about review of documentation. So Tamara shared the Phoenix Toolkit. Some of you may have also been part of the Common Data Model workshops, or not the Common Data Model, the Common Data Elements workshops that NCI hosted last week. And there were a lot of really good sources for Common Data Elements that were shared at that meeting. And I think those can be some other sources. One of them was the SHARE study, which is working on socioeconomic determinants of health. And they have a nice list of about 30 CDEs that I think probably overlap a lot of what we look at. And I can't remember if it's at the NIH level or the NCI level, but they have put out a request for information. I can also share the link for that if anybody's interested in looking at it. But they're trying to determine the set of CDEs that will be required for grant applicants. And so they're looking for feedback on that. And so I think that list will also be helpful to us as well. So any thoughts, comments on types of documentation we can look into? So I can go ahead and put in some of these links. Again, we might want to figure out a systematic approach to it or what our goals are so we can define that further and also start thinking about how we want to source the work, which kind of gets to a little bit to the last item, but I'll go through the second item first. So I think one of the things that Odyssey really does nicely as a community to help each other move forward is share out surveys. So I don't know how many of you, I guess I should ask, do any of you participate on the Odyssey community calls. They're 11 o'clock on Tuesdays. I believe I forwarded the invite before, but I'm happy to forward it again. Does, I don't know, show of hands or nods, has anybody gone to any of these? A couple. So it's a nice meeting to go to in terms of just getting a feel for the larger community, what other activities are going on, getting more familiar with sort of the leads in that area. But one of the things they do is promote activity of other working groups, and this can include things like surveys. So like last year, Claire did do a survey for everybody who's got their data in the common data model, so they can update that list, which is shared out through the book of Odyssey. And so one of the things I was thinking we could do was create a survey to solicit information about surveys. So put together a survey to solicit information about other groups that have been trying to map survey data to OMOP. And so we could, have some discussion on a form. I'll circle back to what help we might need with it. But basically, this is something we could put together, make available once we have our wiki set up, or I'll see how else they usually just distribute these things through links. They could promote it through the community call. And basically, I think it'd be a much quicker way to get information about what other groups are doing than trying to troll through the forums. We can certainly post to the forum and post the survey link to the forum as well, but I think there's so much information in the forum. If you try to search every survey thing, it's going to be an endeavor. And also a lot of these things are out of date. Like when I go look for surveys, some of these conversations ended like a few years ago. So I think it would be just good to see if we could get sort of a snapshot of what's already been done out there. The other potential crowdsourcing activity is, once we have that information, is getting help collating it and logging it into something that's usable. So one of the other things that happens through the community calls is sort of basically types of hackathons. So for example, in February, they do Phenotype February, where the phenotyping group works on 3 or 4 phenotypes they're trying to establish the definitions and the code to create. And over the course of the month, they work and then they produce products from that. In April, the CDM group is doing basically a docuthon where they're trying to update all of the documentation around the CDM, because what they basically found is a lot of the guidelines are spread out across different resources. So they're trying to get all those put together. And so I thought it was a kind of clever way that it's being crowdsourced. They've created 3 different sort of types of work. One is basically searching the internet for the location of these different sources of information. The second group will take that and put it into a template that the third group will then use to enter that information into the wiki. So I think as one of the things we could potentially do is solicit the same thing for the survey work. So basically ask for volunteers to, read information from these forms in a template, use that to enter it into something we've come up with that we feel will be helpful for utilizing the information we create as part of the landscape analyses. And then that also takes the burden off of this group and trying to find individuals within our own groups who could help with this. Of course, we'll need help creating these different forms, but I think it might be a good way to help us make relatively quick progress on the landscape analyses. So how does that sound? Sound like a doable approach? That of course, any volunteers who want to work on, I guess we'd start with a draft to solicit the information. So what kind of things we would need from those conducting the study. Monsi.
Hi, sorry, I was late, so I guess too late to volunteer for anything.
You've been volunteered.
Why do I feel that's by design?
Sounds good, Nicole. I think that, it really would be useful to understand more what all of us and maybe UK Biobank, on the very first call, I think that Tamara and maybe Brandy as well, we're discussing some of those aspects. And this is all with the aims of having a GitHub repo for survey tables, right? But it's also quite broad as well, right, in terms of surveys. So I mean, just even looking at sort of the pipeline that the Connect study will have for subsequent surveys. So I think one of our OKRs after the landscape analysis might be to kind of see where the biggest need is for a CDM or table for the CDM for survey elements. I don't know if that's already in your thinking or whether you have already sort of have some sort of idea about the reduction in your mind of what elements are going to be the most important, or I don't know if you want to talk about that. But then I think that for sure this landscape analysis will be extremely informative. I'm not sure exactly the survey once the survey to solicit information, that is, for OMOP survey work, when we develop that, how easy it will be to identify the few cohorts and individuals that may have worked on it. But maybe between all of us on the call here, we'd have some good starting places. But it makes sense to me for this landscape analysis to be done as the first step. I don't know if you have any comebacks on any of that, Nicole.
No, I think that makes sense to me. I definitely agree that the landscape analysis kind of needs to be the first thing we do. One of the things we could add to the solicitation is like, what did you need most? Like, what did you wish you have that you didn't, or what thing would have helped you along? And maybe that could help us determine like what our priorities could be for creating a resource or a table. That might be something helpful to ask. And then just to make sure I understood, Michael, are you thinking that is part of the landscape process, or even before we started, your group and Alla and there's somebody on here from all of us would maybe talk about their process for the surveys a little bit, or that as part of the landscape process?
I'm talking about the OMOPing of the survey data. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah. Like what all of us and our Future Health are doing.
Well, our Future Health hasn't done anything so far, but I know UK Biobank was mentioned on one of the earlier calls as well.
Yes.
But outside of those two studies, I don't know who else is doing any sort of attempt to either have a forward look or retrospective look on survey elements in an OMOP sort of concept CDM type of model, and whether it's official or unofficial, and also whether it has any links to anything that's been done previously. I think learning about the process from UK Biobank and from the individuals that did the OMOP of UK Biobank, as well as from all of us, I think would be really helpful, and be part of that. Maybe it's not part of the landscape analysis, but it's a very close second, isn't it, to kind of understood what has gone before.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely think that
always
would
in
be
process
helpful.
as well. Always in process.
Yeah.
Sorry, Matsi.
Yeah, no, fully agree. I think isn't ICS CPS 2 or 3 also trying to do that? We have I'm trying to see who's here. Isn't someone from the study here? No, it's from the whole consortium presentation. I think maybe it's worth
we can
asking.
check.
Yeah, it might be a good idea to ask them. And the UK Biobank, they have a paper that they published on that, so we could potentially ask the first author of the paper, or whether somebody from there they could come and present to us. That could be really helpful.
Another group that isn't necessarily creating a vocabulary the way that all of us or UK Biobank is, but the Nutrition for Precision Health Initiative, their coordinating center is essentially OMOPing their survey data elements, just leveraging the vocab in some way. I haven't seen a lot of their work, but I think that might be another use case, and I'm happy to reach out if we think that would be helpful for them to present to see if they'd be interested.
That would be great, Brandy. And what was the name of the group again?
It's the Nutrition for Precision Health Initiative. It's a ancillary study to all of us through the Common Fund.
Oh, love to blame it just because I'm typing live, but I can't spell ever. Okay. Nutrition for Precision Health is right. Okay, yeah, I think that'd be great. So we can, that was another thing. I didn't have it on here, but that we talk about is kind of what we want to rotate through in the meetings. So the other item that I had on here for us to discuss, and not that we have to skip to that from here, was the use cases, but we can also kind of talk about how we want to move each of these through over meetings. So how, alternate discussing use cases with the landscape, and then part of the landscape meetings could be having these presenters. And so getting those organized for the upcoming weeks. I think that would be helpful. So anything else on the landscape analyses before we talk about the use cases?
So, Nico, is there any specific action items? I mean, in addition for the landscape analysis, in addition to asking all of us, UK Biobank, maybe others to present?
Not yet.
That's the first step. Okay.
Yeah, I think somewhere in here, I think one of the things we want to do is create the survey. So that you might have missed this part of it, but I think one of the things that we're aware that there are other groups in addition to the ones we've just discussed who've also done mapping for their study. But of course, they're doing these things more or less in a one-off way to support their study. And that, again, looking at any tools they've built, challenges they've had, what's actually been mapped, would be helpful to have our landscape analysis. So basically what, I guess, another action item we would need in addition to contacting people would be to work on, start putting together questions we would want to ask other groups for that survey.
Okay, there are, because there might be, I think there are quite a lot of EU-funded projects under the context of FAIR databases that I keep hearing about those. I can try to volunteer to do a deeper look into that, because they might be not in the context of cancer, but in other diseases, that there might be some groups that have done that through the this EU-funded project. So I can try to find out if there's any groups that will be worth talking to them. And I put in the chat I think the paper from the UK Biobank.
Oh, cool. I
could also potentially follow up with Peter's. I think I heard his name in another context. I don't know him. That's a senior author. It's part of the Health Data Research UK Michael, that you might be familiar with. So I can try to follow up with him.
That'd be great. Okay, so you're going to look into the U-funded groups and first author.
Is the last author.
The last author.
Yeah, his name is familiar, so I'll try to find out. I think I heard him in a different context. Yeah.
Great. Okay. And then Brandy's going to look into nutrition for precision health. And then anybody in touch with anybody from CPS that they Might want to reach out to them to get some information. That was mentioned as another possible group.
I could ask Lauren Terrace, but I'm wondering if Alpa is really the better person since she was the
Yeah,
one who spoke
Alpa.
at NCI.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you could ask Alpa because I think she mentioned it on her presentation.
So.
Yeah, so it's will you do that? I'm trying to. I can email her as well, but or whoever.
I've never really spoke. I've been
Oh,
on
okay.
emails with her.
I
I've
can
never really
email.
met her.
Since
Okay.
I can email Alpa because I'll talk to her about that before. I'll see you,
Okay.
Nicole. So
All right, thanks.
that stuff. Okay. Okay, I'm not volunteering to do anything else. That's it.
No, that's plenty, Monty. Thank you. See, and you thought by joining late, you were going to volunteer for
Yes,
anything.
exactly.
So great. All right. Well, that sounds like a really good start for some presenting. So I think, yeah, you've got the cadence of our meetings, our calendars open. If you have anybody who agrees, just reach out to me and we'll just get them scheduled. I definitely think that will be a good use of the group time. And then I will volunteer then to take the first crack at the survey and put together some questions. And then I can share that out and get your feedback, and hopefully we can develop it into something useful. Good. Love having a plan. All right. And then the second item we'd really discussed for our, oh, go ahead. Oh, it sounded like somebody wanted to say something. Was there another comment? Okay.
Maybe it was me. So I was just going to say that I don't know if we discussed this at all, but there's also, CPRD also did something on the observation table. And so could be that we reach out to this person as well. I don't know if Craig Meyer at NIH, or we could reach out to him cold, but it's quite interesting because this abstract as well talks about CPRD observation file and the domain of each row being used to assign proper data to proper OMOP tables or columns by converting source values to standard concepts. So I think that could be quite interesting as well. I don't know if anyone.
Okay. But what's his house's last name spelled? Do you have that?
Mayer, Craig
Okay.
S. Mayer. Yeah, Mayer.
Okay. Actually, we'll put the S because sometimes it's hard to find people.
Yeah.
Okay. And what they were working on the observation table, you said?
Yeah, I just popped it in the chat as well. Well, it's
great.
it's OMOPing the CPRD ORM data set.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I could reach out to him.
Seems to be at the National Library of Medicine.
Oh, great.
Be a good person to
Yes,
talk to anyway.
Definitely.
Find out what else they're doing from that effort they might be doing from that National Library of Medicine.
Great. Looks like we have a lot of leads. We haven't even done the survey. So that sounds good. All right, so then the use cases. So that was the next thing, basically having some use cases that we've defined to then apply these things, which I also think will help us come up with what you were talking about before, Michael, with like what are the elements that are most important, or the biggest need for. And so we've talked about using the BCRPP data for that. Jim, I know you've expressed an interest in the California teachers as well. So basically, I think what we can have as our OKR is the process of developing these use cases. And again, what they need to entail. And one of the things Tom and I had talked about is that this could also be sort of where we start developing the value proposition. Like we all know, even with whatever tools and documentation we're able to provide, this is a heavy lift. And so that value proposition of, why do this for your group will be helpful. And so that was one of the things Tom was talking about working on in terms of starting to elucidate our use cases. Tom, did you want to talk a little bit about what you had in mind, or we talked about maybe Tom presenting next week on some of the BCRPP aspects for developing the use case?
Yeah, so from picking up from what we were talking about last week, the for the BCRPP, I mean, like, we were thinking, like, as everybody here is, I think, pretty familiar with, like, projects within the NCI cohort consortium. You end up reinventing the wheels so many times from project to project of harmonizing very essentially the same variables over and over to very similar data dictionaries. So I think within the BCRPP, we're hoping to steer things in a better direction where we don't end up having to do that over and over again and trying to reuse this research resource for projects beyond just the main aims of the BCRPP. So yeah, I think Nicole and I were talking that, like, perhaps next week I can go ahead. I think a number of us on the call, like, I know Jim and Monsi definitely, like, are familiar with the breast cancer risk prediction project, but I can go ahead and give an overview of what the project is and what the data dictionary looks like and how this potentially could be used as a use case for this work that we're doing here.
Sounds good, Tom. Thank you. Jim, are you interested in doing anything similar for the California Teaches Study?
He put in the chat that he was stepping away for a minute.
Oh, okay.
So he may not be back yet.
Okay. Okay. Well, nothing else will ping him after the call. So that sounds good, Tom. I think that will help start developing that. So I think where we could possibly go from here then is basically just taking what we've talked about today and turning them into an OKR and then listing these different steps that we've talked about. And that's something then that we can submit to the group we're under, the CDM group, for feedback and, possibly then present it to that larger group. But I think this helps us have some steps in mind to keep moving forward. And I think that's enough for the OKRs. It's like, what are we trying to do? And how will we know the key results portion? How will we know we've done it? And so having these presentations, doing the survey, that kind of thing, it gives us basically deliverables that we can use to kind of gauge where we are. So that's pretty much all I have. Is there anything else on the use cases or the landscape survey or assessment that anybody else wants to add to the discussion? Okay, sounds good. I feel like we have a plan. So I will try to get these out earlier. I actually took notes this time, although they're not in any particular order. So I'll try to get this out earlier. I will work on drafting the OKRs as well as the survey to solicit work, and then reaching out to Craig Mayer. And then Monsi is going to look into reaching out to several people, including the U-funded groups, the Last Author for Biobank, and ALPA. I think, Michael, you were going to reach out to you. Were you reaching out to somebody, Michael, as well? Did I miss?
No, I
Oh,
think I
Brand.
strategically took no actions.
Okay.
I'm
And
only joking. I'm
then
happy to take something on, but I think I suggested Craig Mayer, but I think you might be in a better position given that
yeah,
I couldn't find his email, but hopefully it'll be in your directory. But I'm
yeah, it
happy to
should
take
be.
on any of the outreach. I mean, are we going to do this outreach all just individually? And if so, what's the ask of these individuals as well? Is it to come and present, or is there a standard set of questions we want to ask them, particularly,
Oh,
you were alluding to earlier, like sort of gap analysis or what they did and what they tackled. I mean, because it sounds like it'd be of most use to individuals here to identify, cohorts that have done some form of mapping with respect to certain domains rather than the standard domains. But I'm
mhm.
not sure if I'm speaking rubbish here, and we're willing to have a talk from anybody, but a bit of further guidance from you, Nicole, I think would be good. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think we definitely want to solicit them to present. Um, but it would be helpful. Yeah, I'm sure they would appreciate specific questions if they agree to present as to what we're looking for. And I think maybe if everyone could send some questions they have, then we could pass that on to them before they present. I think that might be a good way to do it. And then we can also kind of try to get the same information across presenters so we can kind of see how each group approached the problem.
Yeah, in terms of the initial ask, I was going to say, well, we have this group, but do we have like are we in the OMOB website as a recognized working group? Because that I think always has a bit more of a weight.
Yeah.
Do you have the link so that we say we are this group?
So I'll see what we need to do that. We'll have the GitHub link. So we are under Odyssey as far as the repo.
Okay.
There are certainly I can see if we can get added to the list, or if we already are on the list of working groups. Right now, they basically tend to have them set up with they did OKR presentations earlier in the year, and we just, clearly were shiny and new and weren't ready for that yet. So I can find out though if there's a list.
Yeah.
Like if there's a link or a list once we have the repo. Basically, we need the repo so that people can link to that from anywhere, we're listed within the Odyssey documentation.
If we have like a sentence or two that said who we are and what is our main goal, I think that would be good to give them as a introduction, and then last specific question. So we are trying to generate basically vocabularies for survey data, and we are reaching out to these people to because we know they attempted that with this type of and then it's within the context of epidemiological studies, survey data, health in risk factors. I guess we are focusing on cancer, but it's not specific to cancer, but the group here
not specific.
but it's not specific, but basically
it's not specific to cancer. Although obviously some of our cohorts are that way, but I think we've got enough non-cancer specific cohort representation in this group.
And basically want to know their experience on that effort and whether they have already started. Because we know from OMOP there is only our future, all of us, right, that has created concept IDs that are under OMOP. Isn't that true? Is that one of the
and UK Biobank,
we certainly have.
Yeah. UK Biobank as well, right? So I think these are the only two cohorts in terms of survey data that has created. Is that true, or are there others? I think that's where we started.
That's part of what we're trying to find out. But we know UK Biobank and all of us have, but we don't know what solutions
that
other
would be a reason to ask them why we are approaching them. We want to hear from them first. So if you have a link and maybe a sentence or two that you can send us to how to introduce the group. It might be helpful. So and then I think we should always see you at least since you're coordinating, Nicole. We don't have to see everyone when we contact, so you keep track of all these contacts.
that to my list. That sounds good. And then I think basically since a couple people are asking, we're asking multiple people and multiple people are doing the asking, I guess to get a couple of, Monday 10 a.m. dates that are available, and then we'll try to coordinate the invite with availability of the other groups, and hopefully not get too many collisions, or decide if, I'm sure we could also do 2 in a meeting and give each one a half hour.
Yeah.
Or do you think that's too much?
But
Okay.
it's all of us coming next, because since we have it here. That Tamara there. Could we maybe?
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to talk about all of us. The truth is, I am not the expert on how we actually went about making those concept IDs.
Is there
Brandy,
someone you could reach out that
yeah,
from
of
all of
course.
us that could give a presentation? I think that would be really
And
helpful to start with you.
yeah, so
Mhm.
Brandy is here from our Data and Research Center, and I think she might be the better presenter.
Mhm.
I would be the person from our team who could make a presentation, and I can do it any of our Monday times.
Okay.
And then I know have an
Okay.
action item. I'm going to follow up with the NPH group. I'm on a curation subgroup call with them, so I can just, Nicole, once you're ready, just connect you there to see and
Okay.
figure out a good date for them.
Okay, great. Yeah, that sounds good. So, just to make sure we keep moving both the use cases and landscape, do we want to do Tom's first next week, and then Brandy, maybe you go, or not next week, at our next meeting, and then Brandy, you go to the meeting after that? Does that sound good?
That works for
Works for
me,
me.
but yeah.
Okay, great. And then Jim, are you back on the call?
Yes, morning, everyone.
Oh, good morning. We had wanted to see, so at our next meeting, we're going to start developing the use cases a little bit. So Tom is going to present on the BCRPP and a little bit about the study and why it might be a good source for the use case, and then also sort of what the value proposition is. Would you be interested in doing the same thing for the California teacher study at our next meeting?
Yes, of course.
Okay, great. All right, so that'll be our agenda for the next meeting, and then the meeting after that, Brandy will present on all of us, and then we all reach out to our respective people to get the other groups scheduled. Sound good? Well, thanks everyone for joining this morning and continuing to work on this, and I hope you have a great rest of your week.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nicole.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.